Marcus hadn't seen his niece in 5 years. He'd left her a luxury condo, a trust fund, everything. Now she was under a highway overpass, barefoot, holding bankruptcy papers. "It's all gone, Uncle." His wife grabbed the documents. Her hands trembled. "Marcus, this signature. Your brother's been dead for months. Who signed this last week?" If you're hooked by this story, smash that like button right now. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because you won't believe what happens next. Drop a comment telling me what you think happened to Lily's money. Let's get to 1,000 comments. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday evening, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of reflected neon. Marcus Chen sat in the back of his Tesla, scrolling through investment portfolios on his tablet while his wife Elena stared out the window. They just left a tech industry gala downtown, both dressed in evening wear that cost more than most people made in a month. Marcus was exhausted. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from building a software empire over 20 years, from turning nothing into something worth hundreds of millions. He was ready to go home, pour himself a drink, and forget about the world for a few hours. But then Elena grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice carrying a tremor he'd never heard before. "Stop the car." He looked up, annoyed at first, ready to ask why. Then he saw what she was staring at. Under the overpass, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights of a nearby convenience store, was a group of homeless people huddled together for warmth. Cardboard boxes, torn blankets, the kind of scene you see in every major city. The kind most people train themselves to look past. But Elena wasn't looking past it. She was staring at one figure in particular. A young woman, skeletal thin, curled up against the concrete pillar with her arms wrapped around her knees. Even from the car, even through the rain-streaked window, Marcus could see she was barefoot. Her clothes were little more than rags, and something about the way she held herself, the curve of her shoulders, the angle of her face, made his heart stop. "Pull over," he told the driver, his voice sharp. The Tesla came to a stop at the curb, and Marcus was out before Elena could say another word. The rain soaked through his tuxedo immediately, cold water running down his neck, but he didn't notice. He was walking toward the overpass, toward that figure, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were telling him. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. But as he got closer, as the woman looked up at the sound of his footsteps, he saw her face. Those eyes. His brother's eyes. "Lily," he said. The name came out strangled, barely audible over the rain. The young woman stared at him, and for a moment there was no recognition, just the blank gaze of someone who'd learned to expect nothing from the world. Then something flickered in her expression. Her lips moved, forming his name without sound at first. "Uncle Marcus." Her voice was hoarse, damaged, like she hadn't used it properly in months. Marcus felt his knees go weak. This was his niece, his brother's daughter, the girl he'd left a luxury condo and a trust fund worth $5 million. The girl who should have been finishing graduate school, building a life. Instead, she was here, under an overpass, in rags, barefoot in December rain. Elena appeared beside him, having braved the rain herself. When she saw Lily's face, she gasped. The sound was sharp, almost a cry. "Oh my God, Lily. Baby, what happened to you?" Marcus knelt down in the puddles, not caring about his expensive shoes or his custom-tailored pants. He reached for Lily, and she flinched. Actually flinched away from him like a beaten animal. The gesture broke something inside his chest. "Where's the condo?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Where's the trust fund? Everything I left you, baby girl. Where is everything?" Lily stared at him for a long moment, then reached into a plastic bag beside her. Her movements were slow, careful, like someone who'd learned that quick movements attracted the wrong kind of attention. She pulled out a folder, wrinkled and water-stained, and handed it to him. "It's all gone, Uncle," she whispered. "Bankrupt. Lost everything." Elena grabbed the documents from Marcus's shaking hands and opened the folder. Marcus watched his wife's face go pale in the streetlight, watched her eyes go wide with shock. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely steady. "This signature. Your brother's been dead for months. Who signed this last week?" Marcus snatched the papers from her, his eyes scanning the bankruptcy filing, the foreclosure notices, the debt consolidation forms. Everything was there: official stamps, notary seals, legal language that declared Lily financially ruined. And at the bottom of each page, a signature he'd know anywhere. His brother's signature. David Chen. Dated 7 days ago. David, who'd been dead for 5 months. Buried in Graceland Cemetery with half of Chicago's tech elite at his funeral. Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. "Get in the car," he said, his voice hard now, controlled. "Lily, get in the car right now." For a moment, she didn't move. She just sat there in the rain, looking at him like she didn't quite believe he was real. Like she thought if she blinked, he'd disappear and she'd be alone again under the overpass. "Now," Marcus repeated, softer this time. "Please, baby girl. Let me help you." Elena was already moving, already wrapping her coat around Lily's shoulders, helping her stand. The girl could barely walk. Her legs were weak, unsteady, and when Elena's hand touched her back, Lily winced. They made their way to the Tesla, and Marcus's driver opened the door without a word, his face carefully neutral even though his eyes showed shock. Inside the car with the heat turned up and the rain shut out, Lily started shaking. Not from cold, though she was freezing. From shock. From the overwhelming reality of being warm and safe for the first time in God knows how long. Marcus sat across from her, studying her face, and felt rage building in his chest. Someone had done this. Someone had taken everything from this girl and left her to die on the streets. And whoever they were, they'd forged his dead brother's signature to do it. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. First to his head of security. Then to his legal team. Then to a private investigator he'd used for corporate espionage cases. "I need everyone at my house in 1 hour," he said into the phone. "Drop everything. This is priority 1. Elena held Lily close, whispering reassurances, while Marcus watched the city pass by through tinted windows. Somewhere out there was the person who'd destroyed his niece's life. And Marcus Chin, who'd built a billion-dollar software empire from nothing, who'd crushed competitors and hostile takeovers with ruthless efficiency, was about to teach them what it meant to cross his family. To understand what happened, you have to go back. Back 5 years to when David was still alive and Marcus was on top of the world. The Chen brothers had built their empire together, starting with a single app in a cramped apartment and growing it into a software portfolio worth over $300 million. David handled the coding, the technical architecture, the back-end systems. Marcus handled the business development, the venture capital meetings, the face-to-face negotiations that turned startups into unicorns. They were a perfect team. Brothers in blood and business, inseparable since childhood. David had married young, had a daughter named Lily, and when his wife died of ovarian cancer, he'd raised that little girl alone. Marcus remembered Lily as a child. Bright, curious, always asking questions about everything. She'd visit their offices with her little backpack, taking notes in a journal like she was documenting the whole process. David adored her. Lived for her. Every app he developed, every company he acquired, it was all to build something for his daughter to inherit. When Lily turned 16, David started getting sick. At first, it was just fatigue. Then weight loss. Then the diagnosis, pancreatic cancer, stage 4, inoperable. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 8, fighting the whole way, determined to see Lily graduate high school. Marcus spent every day at his brother's bedside, watching the strongest man he'd ever known waste away to nothing. 3 weeks before David died, he called Marcus into his hospital room alone. The monitors beeped steadily in the background, marking time that was running out. David could barely speak above a whisper, but his grip on Marcus's hand was surprisingly strong. "Promise me," David had said, his eyes burning with intensity. "Promise me you'll take care of her. Promise me Lily will never want for anything." Marcus had made that promise through tears, swearing on everything he held sacred that his niece would be protected, provided for, given every opportunity David had wanted for her. The next day, Marcus called his lawyer, Robert Martinez, a man who'd handled the Chen family's legal affairs for 15 years. Together, they created an ironclad trust fund structure. $5 million in a protected account that would pay Lily a monthly allowance and cover all her expenses until she turned 30. At 30, she'd get full access to the principal. Additionally, Marcus purchased a luxury condo in the Gold Coast neighborhood, $2 million worth of living space, and put it directly in Lily's name. The property was hers, free and clear. No mortgage, no liens. Between the trust fund and the property, Lily was set for life. She could go to any college she wanted, travel the world, start a business. Whatever she dreamed of, the resources were there. David died 2 days after the trust was finalized, peacefully in his sleep with Lily holding his hand. She was 18 years old, legally an adult, suddenly alone in the world. At the funeral, Marcus and Elena had pulled Lily aside and made an offer. "Come live with us," Elena had said, her voice gentle but firm. "We have plenty of space. You shouldn't be alone right now." But Lily had refused. Politely, gratefully, but firmly. She wanted her independence. Wanted to honor her father's memory by standing on her own 2 feet. She had the condo, the trust fund, everything she needed. She'd be fine. Marcus had understood. At 18, he'd wanted independence too. So he'd let her go, made her promise to call if she needed anything, and watched her walk away to start her new life. 6 months after the funeral, Marcus got the opportunity of a lifetime. A massive software development deal in Singapore. A 3-year contract to build an AI platform for a government initiative worth $500 million. It was the kind of project that could double his net worth, cement his legacy as one of the great tech innovators of his generation. Elena wanted him to take it. Robert said the legal structure for Lily's trust was solid. And Lily, when he'd called to tell her, had encouraged him. "Go, Uncle Marcus," she'd said, her voice bright over the phone. "Dad would want you to take this. I'll be fine. I promise." So he'd gone. Moved to Singapore with Elena, threw himself into the project, and maintained contact with Lily through video calls and texts. The first year was good. Lily seemed happy, showed him around the condo on FaceTime, talked about her classes at Northwestern where she was studying computer science. She looked healthy, sounded stable. Marcus felt proud of her. The second year, things started to change. Lily's calls became less frequent. When they did talk, she seemed distracted, quieter than usual. Marcus chalked it up to her getting busier with school, making new friends, building her own life. Young people didn't need to check in with their uncles every week. It was natural for her to become more independent. The third year, the calls stopped almost entirely. Lily's responses to his texts became 1 or 2 words. "Fine. Busy. Talk soon." Marcus felt a twinge of concern, but Elena reminded him that this was what growing up looked like. Kids pulled away. It didn't mean something was wrong. By the 4th year, Marcus was deep in the final stages of the Singapore project, working 18-hour days, managing hundreds of developers and contractors. When Lily stopped responding to his messages entirely, he told himself he'd deal with it when he got home. She was 22 now, an adult. Probably just living her life. Maybe she was dating someone. Maybe she was traveling. Maybe she just needed space. He'd find out when he returned to Chicago. The Singapore project finished 2 months ago. Marcus and Elena returned home triumphant, the platform completed ahead of schedule and under budget, already being adopted by 3 other countries. One of the first things Marcus did was try to call Lily. The number was disconnected. He drove to the Gold Coast condo, excited to surprise her, maybe take her to dinner and catch up properly. But when he arrived, a young couple answered the door. They'd bought the place a year ago, they said. Paid market value. Had no idea who Lily was. Marcus had felt confused but not alarmed. Maybe she'd sold it. Maybe she wanted something different. The real estate market was hot. She could have made a profit and bought something else. He'd asked Robert to track her down, find out where she'd moved. But Robert had retired 6 months earlier, moved to Arizona, and the new lawyer handling the Chen accounts didn't have any recent information on Lily. The trust fund, they said, had been dissolved. Legally, properly. They showed Marcus the paperwork. Everything appeared in order. Marcus had spent the last 2 months casually looking for his niece, assuming she'd turn up eventually. Maybe she'd changed her number. Maybe she was traveling abroad. Maybe she'd gotten married and changed her name. He wasn't worried. Annoyed maybe that she hadn't kept in touch, but not worried. Until tonight. Until he saw her under that overpass, broken and barefoot, holding bankruptcy papers signed by a dead man. Now, sitting in his mansion's master bathroom while Elena helped Lily shower, Marcus stared at those documents like they held the secrets of the universe. Every page had been notarized. Every signature looked legitimate. The bankruptcy filing showed massive debts, credit cards, personal loans, business ventures that had failed. The foreclosure notice on the condo cited unpaid property taxes and HOA fees. It all looked legal, official, real. Except for one impossible detail. David's signature, dated last week. David, who'd been in the ground for 5 months. When Lily finally emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in one of Elena's robes, she looked slightly more human. The layers of street grime were gone, revealing just how thin she'd become. Marcus could count her ribs through the robe. Elena had found old scars while helping her wash. Cigarette burns on her back, long healed but unmistakable. Someone had hurt this girl badly. They sat her down in the kitchen, fed her soup slowly so she wouldn't get sick, and waited. Marcus had learned patience over the years. Pushing wouldn't help. Lily needed to feel safe first. Needed to trust that this wasn't a dream she'd wake up from, back under that overpass. It took until morning. Marcus and Elena had put Lily in one of the guest rooms, tucked her into bed like a child, and left her to sleep. At dawn, Marcus was sitting in his home office, still staring at the bankruptcy papers, when he heard movement. Lily appeared in the doorway, wearing clothes Elena had laid out for her. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the bright-eyed girl who'd visited their offices. "Can I tell you what happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and Lily began. "It started 2 years ago," she said. About 6 months after Marcus had left for Singapore. Lily had been doing well. Classes were good. The condo was beautiful. The monthly allowance from the trust fund was more than enough. She was happy, healing from her father's death, building a future. Then a woman showed up at her door. Her name was Sharon. Tall, elegant, well-dressed. She had a story ready, delivered with tears that seemed genuine. Sharon claimed to be David's girlfriend, his secret girlfriend, the woman he'd loved for years but couldn't marry because of Lily. She said David had promised to take care of her after he died. Promised her a share of everything. She had proof, photos of herself with David, letters in his handwriting, bank statements showing transfers David had made to her account. Lily, still grieving, still wanting to believe the best about her father, had listened. Sharon played it perfectly. She didn't demand anything at first. Just shared stories about David, cried about losing him, bonded with Lily over their mutual grief. She became a friend, a confidant, someone who understood what it was like to lose David Chen. Over weeks, Sharon slowly introduced the idea that David had made promises. Legal promises. That he'd wanted Sharon to be provided for, just like Lily. That it wasn't fair for Lily to have everything when David had loved them both. Lily, young and trusting and desperate to honor her father's wishes, had believed it. When Sharon showed her legal documents, papers that claimed David had promised half the trust fund to Sharon in a codicil, Lily hadn't questioned them. Sharon brought a notary, made everything seem official and proper. She said they were just adjustment papers, documents that would give Sharon access to her fair share while leaving Lily's portion intact. Lily signed. Lily signed everything Sharon put in front of her, believing she was doing what her father would have wanted. Within 2 weeks, Lily's bank account was empty. The trust fund had been transferred to offshore accounts she couldn't access or trace. Sharon stopped answering her calls. When Lily tried to contact Robert, she found out he'd retired. The new lawyer at the firm didn't know her case, didn't have the original trust documents readily available, and told her it would take weeks to sort out. By the time Lily realized what had happened, it was too late. The money was gone. She tried to hold on to the condo, but without the trust fund, she had no income. She couldn't pay property taxes, couldn't pay HOA fees, couldn't afford utilities or food. She'd gotten a job at a coffee shop, trying to cover expenses, but it wasn't nearly enough. Foreclosure notices piled up. She'd tried calling Marcus, but he was in Singapore, in meetings, and she couldn't reach him. She left messages that went unreturned. She felt ashamed, stupid, like she'd failed her father's memory by being so naive. The foreclosure went through. Lily was evicted from the condo with nowhere to go. She bounced between friends' couches for a while, but that couldn't last. She was too proud to explain what had happened, too embarrassed to ask for help. Eventually, she ended up on the streets. That was 8 months ago. 8 months of sleeping under overpasses, in shelters, in doorways. 8 months of learning how to survive on nothing. She tried to find Sharon, tried to track her down, but the woman had vanished completely. The address she'd given was fake. The phone number was disconnected. Even the name Sharon was probably made up. The notary who'd stamped the documents claimed he didn't remember her, said he processed hundreds of papers a week. The bank that had received the trust fund transfer was in the Cayman Islands and wouldn't provide information without a court order. Lily had gone to the police, but they'd said it was a civil matter, not criminal. They couldn't help. She tried calling Marcus again, but by then his number had changed for the Singapore project, and she didn't have the new one. She was alone. Broke. Hopeless. The cigarette burns on her back came from a shelter where an older woman had decided Lily was too pretty, too young, taking up space that belonged to someone who'd been on the streets longer. The woman had held her down, pressed lit cigarettes into her skin while others watched and did nothing. After that, Lily had stopped going to shelters. The streets were dangerous, but at least outdoors she could run. Marcus listened to all of this without interrupting. His hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. When Lily finished, when her voice finally gave out and she sat there crying silently, he stood up. "I'm going to fix this," he said, his voice hard as steel. "I'm going to find whoever did this, and I'm going to make them pay." Elena put a hand on his arm, her eyes showing the same rage he felt. "We'll fix this together," she said. Lily's not alone anymore. The first call Marcus made was to his legal team. Not Robert's old firm, but a group of attorneys who specialized in fraud and financial crimes. Within hours, they were in his office, reviewing every document Lily had. They traced the shell company that had taken ownership of the condo. It was registered in Delaware, a notorious haven for corporate secrecy, with layers upon layers of legal protection. The directors listed were all nominee services, paid figureheads who signed papers without asking questions. The actual owners were hidden behind so many corporate veils that breaking through would take months and cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. The trust fund transfer was even worse. The offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands had been closed shortly after receiving the money. The funds had been moved again, probably to Switzerland or Singapore, jurisdictions with even stronger banking privacy laws. Without a smoking gun, without proof of fraud that would convince a foreign court to open sealed records, the money was gone forever. For 3 days, Marcus's team hit wall after wall. Whoever had orchestrated this knew exactly what they were doing. They'd covered their tracks with professional precision, using every legal loophole and privacy protection available. It wasn't the work of a simple con artist. This was sophisticated, planned, executed by someone who understood finance, law, and how to disappear money where it could never be found. Marcus was ready to hire a private investigator, ready to spend millions hunting down leads, when Elena made a discovery. She'd been going through the bankruptcy papers again, studying every detail, when she noticed something. The notary stamp on several documents came from a firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a small detail, easy to miss, but Elena had a sharp eye for inconsistencies. Why would someone in Chicago use a notary from Milwaukee? She cross-referenced it with the documents Lily had kept from her meetings with Sharon. Different papers, different dates, but the same notary firm. Milwaukee Mobile Notary Services. It was a connection. A thread. The first real lead they'd found. Marcus and Elena were on a plane to Milwaukee the next morning. The notary office was exactly what Marcus had expected. A small, shabby operation in a strip mall between a check-cashing place and a dollar store. The kind of business that survived on volume, stamping hundreds of documents a week without asking too many questions. The owner, a nervous man in his 50s named Gerald, went pale when Marcus walked in with two lawyers. At first, Gerald claimed he didn't remember anything. He processed so many documents, saw so many faces. How could he possibly recall one specific transaction from 2 years ago? Marcus let his lawyers explain, in very clear terms, that Gerald's notary seal had been used to authenticate fraudulent documents. That federal charges for notary fraud carried up to 10 years in prison. That his business license would be revoked, his assets seized, his reputation destroyed. That unless he cooperated fully, right now, he was going to lose everything. Gerald broke in under 5 minutes. Yes, he remembered. A man had come in, offered him $30,000 in cash to stamp some papers. Gerald hadn't asked questions, hadn't verified identities, hadn't done any of the things notaries are legally required to do. The money had been too good. He'd stamped the papers, taken the cash, and tried to forget about it. Who was the man? Gerald didn't have a name, but he had a description. Tall, Asian, about 40, with a distinctive scar over his left eyebrow. Well-dressed. Professional. Spoke like an educated man, not a street criminal. And he had a phone number. Gerald had kept it, just in case. Just in case of what, he wouldn't say, but Marcus suspected the notary had been hoping to blackmail someone eventually. Gerald handed over a business card, worn and bent from being carried in a wallet for 2 years. No name on the card, just a phone number with a Milwaukee area code. Marcus called the number right there in the parking lot. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. Yeah. The voice was male, cautious, guarded. I'm looking for the person who hired a Milwaukee notary 2 years ago, Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral. I have a business proposition. There was a long pause. Marcus could hear background noise. A television maybe, or traffic. Who is this? The voice asked. Someone willing to pay for information, Marcus replied. $60,000 for a name. Cash. No questions asked. Another pause. Then, the arcade. Downtown Milwaukee. 1 hour. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Elena, who'd been listening on speaker. This could be a trap, she said. Could be, Marcus agreed. But it's the best lead we've got. They met in a downtown Milwaukee coffee shop, a place busy enough to feel safe. The man who showed up was exactly as Gerald had described. Tall, Asian, scar over his left eyebrow. He sat down across from Marcus without shaking hands, his eyes constantly scanning the room. You got the money? He asked. Marcus slid a manila envelope across the table. The man opened it just enough to see the stacks of hundreds inside, then closed it quickly. What do you want to know? Who hired you to set up the notary fraud? Marcus said. I want a name. The man, he'd introduced himself only as Raymond, studied Marcus for a long moment. You're the uncle, he said finally. The girl's uncle. The one who built all those software companies. Marcus didn't confirm or deny. Just waited. Raymond shrugged. I didn't know what it was about. Just got hired to be a middleman. Set up the notary, deliver some papers, make some calls. Easy money. The name, Marcus repeated. Woman named Sharon, Raymond said. Except that wasn't her real name. Real name's Vanessa. Vanessa Kim. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Vanessa. David's ex-wife. Lily's stepmother from hell. The woman who'd made David's life miserable for 3 years before he'd finally divorced her. Marcus had completely forgotten about her. She'd disappeared after the divorce, moved away, hadn't been heard from in over a decade. She local? Marcus asked, his voice tight. Milwaukee. Raymond nodded. Got an apartment downtown. Fancy place, paid in cash. He rattled off an address, and Marcus committed it to memory. She know you're talking to me? Nobody knows nothing, Raymond said, standing up. And I was never here. He took the envelope and walked out without looking back. Marcus sat there for a moment, processing. Vanessa. It all made sense now. She'd known about the trust fund because she'd been married to David when he was building his wealth. She'd known about Lily's vulnerabilities because she'd lived with the girl for 3 years. She'd known exactly how to manipulate a grieving young woman because she'd studied David's daughter, learned her psychology, planned this revenge for over a decade. The divorce had left Vanessa with almost nothing. David had a prenuptial agreement that protected his assets. She'd walked away with $30,000 and a restraining order after David had discovered she was cheating with multiple men. She'd sworn revenge. Threatened David in court. Said he'd regret leaving her with nothing. And then she'd vanished. David had assumed she'd moved on. Marcus had forgotten she existed. But Vanessa hadn't forgotten. She'd waited, watched, learned that David had died and left everything to Lily. Saw her opportunity for revenge and profit combined. And she'd executed her plan perfectly. Marcus found Vanessa's apartment building within the hour. It was nice, a renovated historic building in downtown Milwaukee, the kind of place that charged $3,000 a month for a 2-bedroom. The kind of place you could afford if you'd stolen $5 million from a grieving girl. He buzzed her apartment. No answer. Buzzed again. On the 3rd try, a woman's voice came through the intercom. Who is it? Marcus Chen, he said clearly. We need to talk. There was a long silence. Then the door buzzed open. Vanessa's apartment was on the 4th floor. Marcus took the stairs, Elena beside him, both of them tense and ready for anything. The apartment door was already open when they arrived. Vanessa stood in the doorway, and Marcus barely recognized her. She'd aged, of course. It had been over 10 years. But more than that, she looked different. Harder. Colder. Marcus, she said, her voice smooth as silk. After all these years. Come in. The apartment was beautifully furnished. Expensive art on the walls, designer furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of downtown. The kind of luxury that $5 million could buy. You know why I'm here, Marcus said. Vanessa smiled. I imagine it has something to do with little Lily. How is she, by the way? She was living under an overpass, Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. Starving. Barefoot. Covered in scars. Vanessa's smile didn't waver. Oh dear. That is unfortunate. You stole everything from her, Marcus continued. Pretended to be someone named Sharon. Manipulated her into signing away her inheritance. You committed federal fraud, identity theft, and God knows what else. Vanessa walked to her bar cart and poured herself wine. Would you like a drink? I want the money back, Marcus said. Every penny. And then I want you in prison. Vanessa laughed. The money's gone, Marcus. Offshore accounts. Untraceable. Even if you could prove I took it, which you can't, you'd never see a penny. I can prove it, Marcus said. I have the notary. I have Raymond. I have enough to put you away for 20 years. Vanessa took a sip of her wine. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you have unreliable witnesses and paperwork that Lily signed voluntarily. You manipulated her, Elena said from the doorway. She was grieving. You took advantage of her. I presented her with an opportunity, Vanessa corrected. She chose to sign. That's not manipulation. That's business. Marcus stepped closer to Vanessa. Why? David divorced you a decade ago. Why wait all this time? Why hurt his daughter? Vanessa's face hardened. Because David left me with nothing. I gave him 3 years of my life, raised his brat of a daughter, played the perfect wife. And when I made one mistake, a few harmless affairs, he threw me out like garbage. $30,000. That's all I got. Do you know what he was worth when he died? Over $100 million. And he left it all to that girl. So this was revenge, Marcus said. Revenge and profit, Vanessa agreed. Marcus owed me, and since he's dead, I collected from what he left behind. She finished her wine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dinner reservation. You can see yourselves out. Marcus pulled out his phone. I recorded this entire conversation. Every word. Confession to fraud, theft, and conspiracy. Vanessa's eyes widened. Then she laughed again, but it sounded forced. So what? By the time they get a warrant, I'll be in a country with no extradition treaty. Marcus didn't move. You think you've won? You're wrong. Because wherever you run, I'll find you. The next morning, Marcus turned over everything he had to the FBI. The recordings, the notary's testimony, Raymond's information, the trail of documents showing how the trust fund had been dismantled. It took 6 weeks for the FBI to build their case. But when they moved fast. Vanessa was arrested at Milwaukee's Mitchell International Airport, trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with 3 fake passports and $100,000 in cash. The federal prosecutor charged her with wire fraud, identity theft, notary fraud, and conspiracy. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Raymond testified in exchange for immunity. Gerald, the notary, testified to save his business. Marcus and Lily both took the stand, telling their stories to a jury that looked more horrified with each passing day. Vanessa's defense attorney tried to argue that Lily had signed the documents willingly, that there was no proof of coercion. But the evidence was overwhelming. The fake identity, the forged signatures, the offshore accounts, the calculated manipulation of a grieving young woman. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. The judge sentenced Vanessa to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. She showed no remorse. Even at sentencing, when given the chance to speak, she blamed everyone but herself. The judge cut her off mid-sentence. I've seen a lot of criminals in my courtroom, but rarely have I seen someone with so little conscience. You destroyed a young woman's life out of greed and spite. You deserve every day of the sentence I'm giving you. Vanessa was led away in handcuffs, still talking, still making excuses. Lily watched her go, and for the first time in months, Marcus saw something like peace in his niece's eyes. Outside the courthouse, Lily turned to Marcus. "Thank you," she said simply, "for not giving up on me." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "I'm your family. Family doesn't give up." The rebuilding took time. Marcus couldn't restore the original trust fund. That money was gone, scattered across foreign accounts that would take decades to recover, if ever. But he had his own fortune. He created a new trust for Lily. $2 million, managed carefully with safeguards to prevent another theft. Lily moved into Marcus and Elena's home, not permanently, but for as long as she needed. She started therapy twice a week, working through the trauma of what she'd endured. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the fear that at any moment someone would take it all away again. She enrolled in online classes at Northwestern, picking up where she'd left off. The university, when they heard her story, offered her a full scholarship and academic counseling. Marcus offered her a job at his software company, and to his surprise, she accepted. She started in the customer support division, learning the business from the ground up. She was good at it, had her father's mind for details and her uncle's instinct for people. 6 months after the trial, on Lily's 24th birthday, Marcus took her for a drive. When they pulled up in front of the Gold Coast condo, Lily's face went pale. "Uncle Marcus." "I bought it back," he said. "Cost me almost double what I paid the first time, but I didn't care. This was always supposed to be yours." He handed her the keys. "When you're ready. No pressure. You can stay with us as long as you want. But when you're ready to stand on your own again, this is here, waiting." Lily took the keys with shaking hands. "I'm not ready yet," she said, her voice small. "I know," Marcus replied. "But you will be." And she was. Thank you for watching this incredible journey. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We bring you real stories about real people facing impossible odds. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's struggling, someone who thinks they can't come back from rock bottom. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Marcus's position. Would you have chosen revenge or rebuilding? Remember, sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones closest to us. But sometimes the people who save us are the ones who never gave up looking. Stay strong, stay wise, and I'll see you in the next story.